Can I advise people why we're not starting at 1:30? We've had various things that have happened during the day. We've got various apologies, including Councillor Charlotte Atkins has had an accident and won't make the meeting. But more significantly for our start of the meeting, Syed Hussein is still on a train and won't get into Stafford until around about 5 minutes' time. I've spoken to one or two other people about the calling process, and what we'd rather do, rather than start without the lead speaker, is to start a little bit delayed. We still expect that we'll finish before 3 o'clock, and members will probably know that we've got a LEP meeting starting at 3:30, so we really need to finish before 3 anyway. But speaking to one or two people, I think that's not unrealistic. We would finish by 3 o'clock anyway. So I think if you're happy with that, we'll delay the start possibly until about 1:45. By the way, the website is actually on. We can't stop that, but all they will see is the chamber with little going on, no volume. Okay, so we'll probably start as soon as we see a flustered Councillor Hussein walk in. Okay, if we can take our seats and get ready for the start of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee call-in meeting. There's a few bits of admin we'll get into before we get into the call-in itself. First of all, we've got some apologies. Mandy?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Heath, Charlotte Atkins, Jeremy Pert and Bernard Peters, who is also declaring an interest as he's the Cabinet Member at East Staffordshire.
Okay, no other apologies. Are there any other declarations of interest apart from Councillor Peters' one? No? Okay.
Just for completeness, I'm a member of the Burton Towndale Board.
Okay. And Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, the same goes for me. I'm on the Burton Towndale Board as well.
Yep. 2 members of the Burton Towndale Board. Okay. Another tidy up is we've been a bit lax in getting minutes to corporate review. So we've got a batch of them that need signing off. And members of the Corporate Review Committee happy that we agree the minutes of 7th of September, 5th of October and 16th of November. We're all happy with that? Yeah. It's moved and seconded. Thank you. Right. That brings the agenda to item 4. And I will say that there's a bit of a structure to the meeting that I need to explain. There are set numbers of speakers and set times that we will be keeping to in terms of that process. First of all, we have the group who have raised the call-in and one lead member nominated on behalf of those who will be speaking, who's Councillor Syed Hussein, who gets 5 minutes to speak. Because this particular aspect of the proposed library move at Burton is part of the Prosperous Committee. The chairman of that committee gets to speak, and that's Councillor Tina Clements for 5 minutes. We come to the cabinet member and support member for any supporting directors, and we have 2 involved there. We've got Councillor Philip White and Councillor Victoria Wilson. Councillor Philip White is deputy leader and also cabinet member for economy and skills, and Councillor Wilson is cabinet member for community and culture. So they each get 5 minutes. And then we normally have the officer responsible for this particular call-in, who would have 5 minutes as well. Helen Riley is not available, but we actually got 3 people covering that. So, as I understand it, Jeanine Cox will cover question 1, Wayne Mortiboys will start on question 2, and Catherine Mann will finish off question 2 and deal with question 3. And then we get into the open discussion of the corporate overview and scrutiny committee for general discussion of the issues that have been raised. So hopefully that's all clear, and I'll invite first of all for a 5 minutes presentation the lead member on behalf of the group, which is Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm really grateful for allowing me to attend these things and some things unavoidable circumstances. Thank you once again for accepting this call-in request for the decisions. According to reports, the shift will be the most expensive library or office move in the whole county, Staffordshire County Council. A new or modernized library on the waterfront locations makes considerably more sense than this pricey effort to transform an old structure into a contemporary library and offices. 77%, Mr. Chairman, 77% of 1,161 responses of these consultations has vehemently opposed this move. And 48% of the regular users of the library, they have expressed they will not consider to use the library if it is moved in a new locations. Mr. Chairman, most residents were pleased with the existing purpose-built library, especially its locations. There is no concise evidence that the library move will drive increased footfall. Furthermore, this will abjure the market town's identity, resulting in an abatement in the livelihood of market traders and their staffs. Since option 2 and 3 include no relocations, therefore there are preferable options for the residents than proposed option 1. And then propose option 1 and 8B. In terms of the council, since they are shifting offices at the price of the once-in-a-lifetime generations for our town's grants from the government, and this is simply, Mr. Chairman, it's become a simple relocations, and it's not serving the purpose of the regeneration. It is not creating any net community asset or getting any or creating doing any job creation at all. Nevertheless, the consultation, which was regarded as a tick box exercise, and we vehemently and we disagree that we are very, very discouraged to hear the respected cabinet member saying that, quote unquote, this is not a referendum. We understand this is not a referendum, but it is a random sampling. People have spoken, they don't want it. And if the question is, Mr. Chairman, if people's voices are not heard, then what's the point to doing any consultations or anything at all? It's simply people would consider whether is it a done deal or anything, but people want to know they have spoken and their voice would be respected, and this is our expectations to the council as well. Mr. Chairman, by relocating the library to the market hall, the library will lose its great site overlooking the green expanse of the washlands, as well as built close to a big and mostly quiet car park. So other towns will die for a, the waterfront library or something, and we are pretty blessed that this purpose-built building where it is now. Mr. Chairman, as shown by the responses of the public consultation, this may imply that fewer residents use library. The Staffordshire County Council must consider, in conjunction with local members, whether this transfer is overall worthwhile, also taking into account ESBC's visions for the present library site. Mr. Chairman, if I go back to option 2 and option 3, in option 2 and 3, there was no allocations of these extra £1 million and £6.9 million from the town deal grants. And also, if you leave this one and go ahead with the option 1 and 2, the whole project cost for the taxpayers will be significantly saved, because in option 1 and option 8B, they have used the £6.3 million and £1 million proposed from the county council. Still, yet again, Mr. Chairman, we can see a shortfall of nearly £1 million. There is no clarification where this money is come from. Mr. Chairman, I would also want to point out on this note, I hope the committee will do more investigations and evaluate the aforementioned points in order to provide a better arrangement for Burton residents and future generations. Otherwise, the concept of done deal would establish a negative precedence in our local democracy. It is a privilege and honor to stand on for our residents on behalf of our residents, my children, my residents, and Mr. Chairman, I'm really grateful for your indulgence.
Okay, just remind you we're close to the 5 minutes, so that's fine. We'll go on to the next speaker, which is Tina Clements on behalf of the Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and again it's 5 minutes. Mr. Councillor Flunder?
Yeah, can I just ask if I'm going to be given any opportunities to the reason why I called it in as well as the only other person that called it in, or will I not be able to speak at today's meeting?
Well, you'll not be able to speak as you're not a member of this committee. No, we've got one lead member on behalf of the group. Councillor Clements, you're speaking on behalf of the Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure I can follow the passion shown by Councillor Saeed, but thank you for your presentation, Councillor. Obviously, I supported this call-in due to a number of reasons. And if I can be frank and honest, Chair, this feels like a gentleman agreement has been made way back when, and now the people behind that don't feel that they can renege on it. Sometimes we have to do the bigger thing. We have to hold our hands up and say, sorry, we might have got this wrong, and look at alternatives. There's always an alternative. We are a council that I had drummed into me way back in 2016 that is proud of the way we listen to our residents. And I believe when 70% of the people that responded against this application, they should now be heard and we should listen to them. These people have bothered to respond to us. We now have to do the right thing and look at what the alternatives are, if there are any. We need to look at costings involved. You never know, there might be a better, cheaper option. We're a council that need to look at every option. I, like you know, will not have any axe to grind. I don't live in East Staffordshire. I don't represent residents. I represent the whole of Staffordshire. And I think we now need to be listening and be proactive when residents have bothered to respond to us. The strength of objection is obviously going to be higher with people that use the library, but I'm sure many people that responded don't actually use the library in Burton. It hasn't been scrutinised by us as Prosperous Staffordshire Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It hasn't come to us at all, and I think it should have been. I'll keep it short and sweet. I urge Cabinet and the officers to take on board the passion shown by Councillor Saeed and the objections that we've received, and that's all I really want to say, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clements. Just to come back to Councillor Flunder, in terms of the general discussion, when we do get to that stage, if you feel that you've got something to contribute, when we're in open discussion, that'll be the time to do it. But we next go to the two Cabinet members, starting with Councillor Philip White, Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills.
Thank you very much, Chair, thank you to Councillor Hussain and Councillor Clements for their contributions before me. As it happens, I am a Burtonian as well, and the library building that we're considering relocating from is about the same age as I am. But that's largely by the by in terms of this process. There are many similar regeneration projects that Staffordshire County Council is involved in, as one of our corporate priorities is to support our colleagues in our district and borough councils in pursuing the regeneration of their towns. And the Burton Town Deal scheme is a good example of where we're utilising government funding with the terms and conditions attached to that in terms of the process and the timings by which we can deliver regeneration using that funding. I'll speak to the regeneration elements of this project principally, and one or two other points as well. So, as a Cabinet, this has been an incredibly complex and challenging decision for us to make. The town deal process means that there have been a series of projects which ultimately join together to deliver the regeneration of Burton-on-Trent, but they've had to be evaluated separately and following slightly different timescales, which I recognise does make it difficult to see the benefit of the proposals in their totality and what they will deliver for the town. So I do respect the fact that that does create some difficulties. The proposals for the town, which are principally led by East Staffordshire Borough Council, who are also the accountable body for the town deal, are going to be transformational for the town of Burton. The main element of this is a brand new public plaza on the Burton waterfront, which includes the public square, a food hall, a viewing tower and a visitor centre, which will be located in our current library building. And it is at the request of the leadership of East Staffordshire Borough Council that we have put in motion the process which led to our in-principle decision in December to relocate the library if certain conditions precedent are met. Enabling the redevelopment of the waterfront is key to that vision that East Staffordshire Borough Council and the Town Deal Board in Burton have for how they are going to make the town more attractive to visitors, and that is principally about reconnecting the waterfront of the town with the rest of the town, something that was lost a couple of generations ago by development further in the town of Burton. So the purpose of the library relocation, the trigger for it, is enabling that regeneration to go ahead, and that is very important for the town of Burton that happens. Its future lies in it being an attractive place to visit because of that connection to the waterfront, which at the moment is somewhat broken. An additional factor that is very important in that relocation, it's something that we'll see here in Stafford. I think it's fair to say that you have to be very careful if you regenerate one area of a town and you don't do anything with another area. In this case, the new public plaza we're talking about is at one end of the high street. Burton Market Square, where the Market Hall building is located, is at the other end. It is already one of the less visited parts of the town centre, and there is a concern that if we don't balance the redevelopment on the waterfront with a redevelopment in the Market Square, which will be triggered by this move, that area of the town will become even less visited. And so that balance is another important factor in why relocating the library, which generates its own footfall, independent of other factors, is very important to that vision for regeneration that our partners have. The final thing, although I'll leave Victoria Wilson to speak to the detail of the library relocation itself, we will create a fantastic new library. We have a great track record of doing this to contribute to the regeneration of towns in Newcastle-under-Lyme, here in Stafford, and most recently in Lichfield in another heritage building. So that is the rationale for the move. A couple of other points I will mention briefly, which are more about...
Councillor White, you're close to your time.
That's absolutely fine. Another couple of points I'll mention by way of process. The decision that we made as Cabinet was following hearing from 3 local members who spoke at our Cabinet meeting, and the recommendations that became this decision were made after hearing those members speak and took into account their concerns. Finally, this has been called in by Prosperous Staffordshire Committee We have not, over the 18 months that this proposal has been under discussion by Cabinet, had a request for this to be brought to prosperous Staffordshire. So it is perhaps surprising that it has come at this very late stage and in this forum, when there has been ample opportunity for it to be heard there on other occasions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor White. We stay with Cabinet members. This time, Cabinet Member for Communities and Cultures, Councillor Victoria Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. And yes, I'd like to echo my thanks for Councillor Hussain's and Councillor Clement's comments, and thank the three members who did actually call this in just for more information. And we want to be transparent, and so I'm glad that we have this opportunity. So moving on and specifically referring to the library itself, I feel that we've been quite clear about the reasons for the proposed library move and have been transparent in conveying these through a comprehensive public consultation and engagement programme. This programme was extensive. It was 8 weeks of active engagement with local people via public meetings, engaging with people within the library, outside in the open air, and at Pirelli Stadium as some examples. And as Councillor White has stated, the proposal feeds into a larger project which has taken years to develop, with innumerable hours of work by officers to ensure that the right projects are agreed for the improvement of life for the people of Burton. These include the wish to restore and secure a long-term future for the Market Hall. The purpose of the proposal is the intention to generate greater footfall into the marketplace, which would provide greater opportunities to new and existing businesses in what's currently an underused part of the town centre. We've seen that this has worked really successfully elsewhere in the county. The proposals would also enable us to effectively move other county council functions into the building and provide services and support for smaller businesses. As I've just mentioned, we do have a really strong track record in library service transformation and modernisation, and this has been mentioned by others, and we aim to emulate the success of the projects that have already happened in Lichfield, in Newcastle-under-Lyme and Stafford, which have proved hugely popular in these communities. We want to offer the same quality of facilities to the people of Burton now, and we're confident that we can achieve this. And I'd go further and say that Staffordshire Library Service has proven to be exemplary in its success around the county, and we've been asked to give at least one presentation to outside bodies demonstrating how well we work to show other councils some of our more successful initiatives. I'm absolutely confident that the Library Service team will develop a hugely successful, interesting and useful setting for Burton Library within the Market Hall building. Relocating the library to the Market Hall will enable the County Council to create an inspiring library and community hub. Our benchmark will be Lichfield Library, which has won national recognition for the quality of the library building and has been a catalyst for the regeneration of the wider area. Back to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And now we come to the presentation on behalf of the Directorate, and as I mentioned earlier, there are 3 speakers, but Janine Cox will start.
Okay, so I'm going to respond to the first part of the call-in, which is that inadequate consideration was given to the principal finding of the consultation, which confirmed that 77% of respondents did not agree with the proposed library move. Firstly, I would make the point that effective consultation is necessary when any local authority is proposing a significant change to library provision. The consultation which was completed in this instance was rigorous, and it did form part of the decision-making process. And importantly, it has informed our thinking on future elements of the project and the design. The purpose of the consultation was to enable us to be clear about the community's views and, as I've just said, respond appropriately. I'd like to assure the committee that we carefully considered the feedback of the 1,500 people that responded, either via the questionnaire or through some of the face-to-face opportunities. 1,500 responses equates to 1.6% of Burton's population. and we recognised that just over 3/4 of those were opposed to the scheme, and we've carefully considered the reasons which they gave for that. All free text comments, plus the comments which were made at the focus groups, pop-up events, drop-in sessions, and the public meetings were captured at the time, and they were analysed by theme. Those free text themes are presented in full at Appendix 6 of the Cabinet report, but the key reasons which people gave for opposing the move were as follows: that they were happy with the current library offer and or its location. They were concerned over a lack of facilities, particularly parking and access. Concern was expressed as to what would happen to the market and the traders within that. Some believed that there was no need for change and therefore this was a waste of money. There were some suggestions and comments that the money should be spent on the market hall itself, and there was concern as to what would replace the library on the current site. We recognised that many respondents did not see the need to relocate the library at the time of consultation. However, this was prior to the Borough Council releasing details of their proposals for the redevelopment of the waterfront, which Catherine will refer to later.
Janine, you're going to have to watch the time if you're going to do 3 questions.
Okay. So the range of services will be maintained, however, they will be delivered in a more modern setting, and the entire library offer will be located on the ground floor, which will improve access. There are more than 40 parking spaces in the immediate vicinity of the market hall, and if the scheme progresses, these will be reviewed to increase access to disabled parking, short-term parking, and spaces for parents with children. The concern that was expressed around the market and the market traders will be addressed later on, and Appendix 4A and 4B of the Cabinet report sets out clearly East Staff's proposals for the existing library site. I guess the other key areas that were flagged as part of the consultation that we have addressed through this call-in is to say if the library is relocated, the range and availability of less frequently borrowed books may reduce slightly. However, it should be noted that this has happened in other sites and book loans have still risen. Following the consultation and analysis of existing parking opportunities within the vicinity of the current library site and the market hall has been completed, and this evidences that spaces immediately adjacent to the existing library are greater than in the market hall, but both sites have a substantial number of parking spaces in their immediate vicinity. However, the market hall has more spaces within a 250-metre walk, and it's also closer to local bus stops. As part of the process to compile the Cabinet report, a full community impact assessment...
Janine, that's already 5 minutes.
Okay.
Can you summarise now?
Yeah, okay, I will do. As part of the process to compile the Cabinet report, a full community impact assessment has been completed, and this was attached as Appendix 8 of the Cabinet report. And if you haven't had the opportunity to read this, I do recommend that you do so. The CIA sets out the benefits and risks of the proposals, and it enables us to look at how we mitigate those as we go forward, and if we go forward with this relocation. I'll hand over to Wayne now, who will pick up the second part.
Thank you. So I'm going to take on the question. The Cabinet decision to proceed with the move of Burton Library into Burton Market Hall was decided without giving sufficient consideration to the alternative option of retaining and refurbishing the current Burton Library building. And I'm going to take point A. The proposal delivers the relevant property MTFS revenue savings.
Yeah, we've got a point of order being raised by Councillor.
Point of order is that lead members and officers would have 5 minutes to speak. We've had 2 officers now that are speaking. That would mean they're going to have 15 minutes to speak, and that's going to be more time than members have been afforded. So I think we should keep it to 5 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. I'll let the 2 remaining speakers speak for a minute each, just to be raising the salient points. We've had the circulated document, by the way. Members of Corporate Review have seen the response. So if you'd just like to draw attention to anything in particular, but keep it to a minute each.
Okay. So the actual Cabinet recommendation secured a position for the County Council where the additional costs to the County Council were capped at a maximum investment of the County Council of £1,067,000. And I highlight in that there was an identified shortfall of £1,036,000, and the Cabinet approval assumed that that would be met by external funding. Therefore, some of the arguments about what would happen if don't come to pass, because the recommendation itself satisfies the fact that there wouldn't be no additional expenditure from the County Council. The second one, in terms of footfall, the footfall calculations that have been prepared and assume that the County Council will work in partnership with Borough Council in terms of the relocation of the existing market traders so that they are not lost from the overall town centre. But we will also have to look at the cumulative impact of the proposals of Project D and the footfall that that generates, and also the impact for the people who used to use market stalls, which we assume would be lost, but the people that would originally come to the market hall for the cafe, the second highest proportion of people that go to the market hall is for that cafe. We will be using an improved cafe on the site.
I'll have to stop you there, Wayne, if I can move on to Catherine for the third question.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just cover the question around the current location of Burton Library being one of the most frequently visited libraries in the county. Historically, Staffordshire's library network was established before the 1974 Review of Local Government, and provision therefore differs quite a lot across the county. Some of our static libraries were established by rural and urban district councils, which has left a hub and spoke model in some parts of the county. For example, Cannock Library's got 6 libraries within a 5-mile radius. Burton Library and the Burton area does have an extensive mobile library service which visits surrounding communities, but library use in Burton is very much concentrated on one central library. The nearest local library to Burton is Barton Library, which is 6.3 miles away. So in part, that accounts for the high level of visits. Also contributing to the high level of visits is the popular cafe and the 2 meeting rooms, and these will remain in the new library offer if the library is relocated to the Market Hall. We absolutely believe that libraries can be a fundamental part of high street regeneration. And as you're aware, over the last 6 years, the County Council has demonstrated their commitment to modernising our library offer in relocating 3 libraries into new buildings. The learning from the Lichfield relocation has really inspired confidence in rejuvenating historic buildings, and the success of Lichfield Library, as Victoria Wilson has already said, has influenced our decision to consider the proposal to relocate to Burton Library. Burton Market Hall is a beautiful building. It benefits from considerable space and natural lighting, which we feel will provide a similarly engaging library space to Lichfield, and will continue our success in reimagining and preserving significant heritage buildings as libraries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Most of that detail's in the 11-page summary that was given out today, so members have seen that, which is the Cabinet's response to questions 1, 2 and 3. I did mention earlier that there is a structure to this now. We're in the open discussion stage for members of Corporate Review to feel free to ask questions and raise any comments. I will point out, though, that there is a process where we're looking for 1 of 3 recommendations, and that is the limit of what is possible to the Corporate Review Committee. One is to say, yes, we're happy with what we've heard now, and therefore go ahead with the decision as originally made by the Cabinet. Secondly, the option is to refer back to Cabinet to have another look at it and say that we would like you to reconsider that decision. Or thirdly is the option to recommend that it goes to a full council meeting for the full council to determine an alternative decision. So they're the 3 options, and I'll be looking for recommendations on one of those 3. Councillor Flunder.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity for speaking. Just here, and I'll explain why I'm supporting both Saeed and Tina in terms of the call-in. And I wish that we'd maybe had some more information about whether or not how we could have called it into prosperous maybe at an earlier date. So that's something that perhaps should have come up in our triangulation meetings, but that's something else. So in terms of the process, that's one of the reasons why I called it in. In terms of the data on which some of this information is at the moment in the consultation, I do believe that much of this information was gathered during the pandemic, which means that I don't know what weight we can put to this information in relation to what we're now trying to decide about the overall project. I'm quite sure that the library will be successful wherever it's located within Burton, and I think the development of that library service will be done and be provided by. So I think that also in terms of what happens on that front, I'm sure that whatever we decide at the future and what happens at East Staffordshire Borough Council will be something that we would need to keep a close eye on. In terms of the economic benefits and everything else, it does mean that we can be supporting, and I know the new hub's just opened in Stafford as well, and I think that's a brilliant idea. I think the idea of taking that space and putting it upstairs maybe is one thing in the library. I think that was considered. I do think, however, from my experience of going around 30 years looking at town centres around the town, looking at different festivals and everything else like that, that we are dropping the ball a little bit in replacing and removing what is in fact a very large indoor and a very beautiful building that has just been renovated about 4 or 5 years ago. I actually went to a civic event there about 2.5, 3 years ago, and I thought that the whole area was something that could be done with some development. I don't disagree that development has to happen in the market hall and for us to protect that. But if you take that space away and put library books in it and make it restrictive in that area, then you are removing that potential asset. Now, I realise it's not necessarily an asset that the county council currently run or anything else like that, but just from my experience of running events and things like that, once you start running down this idea of a cultural mix within what's going on at the moment, then I do believe that you take away your options and you take away the income, and also you take away your support and variable idea of new businesses, new traders and everything else, which is exactly where we should be going through from an economic point of view. So I do think that needs to be relooked. So that is another reason why I called it in. And I do think that anything to do with the negative public responses at the moment needs to be also looked at again. If you're going to develop and spend £9 million in Burton and develop the library and everything else, you need the public support. You need that public support to be able to get people and bums on seats and to get people in, not necessarily to use the library, but to use the library in potentially a new way. And I think that's something that I'm very excited about, and that's something I think local members and others need to be aware of, and we need to work on that a little bit. So I think overall, I am happy with the idea of developing something within Burton and everything else, but I do think it would be a good opportunity here to maybe get local members and others with the month that we've got before. I know we've got to try and finish it all before the end of March, but to have a look at ways and means of being able to maybe, for example, I know that from community libraries you can get moving bookshelves. You can move them out of the way, you can keep the space in there, you can move them back again, you can have children's corners, you can do all these different other things, and maybe look at the difference and the balance between the two buildings and the new development in a different way. I just think at the moment, I've got the feeling that it's just a bit blinkered. And that's not a criticism of everyone else here. I just think that we need to look at things in a perhaps a more exciting way than we have done that up to now. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Philip White has indicated desire to respond.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on the point of the future use of the Market Hall building. I just want to be very clear with colleagues that that is a decision for East Staffordshire Borough Council to make. They are the owner of the building and the operator of the market, and they will make a decision as to the future usage of that building, and that's their democratic right to do that, and it's not for us to second guess that. Our proposal is at their request, but they will be able to weigh it in the balance against other proposals that may come forwards, or indeed a no-change option should they wish to do so, but that is not a matter for us.
Okay, any other comments anybody would like to raise? Councillor Pardisi, you're not on this committee. No, you're not one of the original 4 people who've called it in and not on this committee. And not a local member for that matter, so I think that's a three-way no. Anybody else on the committee? Councillor Connor?
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to make one point before I start, which is that we received the responses to the reasons to call in 3 hours before this meeting. 3 hours. So it takes me an hour to get here. So that leaves me with 2 hours to have a look at those responses, which in my view is pretty inadequate. And I think is disrespectful to this whole committee, because I'm probably quite sure that quite a number of us haven't actually read those reasons. And therefore, I think we should have probably had them provided sooner, so that therefore we could have prepared for the meeting in advance. In terms of on to questions, Mr. White, you say that the library move will be the trigger for regeneration. When you say the trigger for regeneration, I think what you mean to say is that actually what it will do is it will remove the ability for Burton as a whole to have a market hall, to hold events in the market hall, and to trade from that premises as it is currently doing. Whether that might be the traders that are currently there at the moment, or whether it might be more imaginative ideas, which I know that the board have been told about, which is the food hall and events idea. But that is what it will do. And we as a council here, it's not all right to just say, well, it's ESBC's fault, or it's ESBC's idea, and we'll just go along with it, because we're a democratic chamber in this organisation, in this county. So we do have a responsibility to make sure that we make the right decision. And if we have proceeded with the move, that gives them the green light to go ahead with whatever they want to do. And I don't think that's fair. So we should here have responsibility to make sure that the decision is the right decision for Burton. Otherwise, what am I here for as a local member if I can't make any change or representation about those plans? The addition that what will be created if the library is moved is what is called a Washlands Visitor Centre, which may involve an education establishment, may involve some bike hire and so on, to build on the green area which is in the middle of Burton called the Washlands. That will be a small building. Now, in ESBC's own consultation process, which it was released 2 days before you made the Cabinet decision, they said that there was room in the building, because you're keeping the current library building, it's not going to be knocked down, it's going to be kept and reclad. It says room to look at other complementary services. Now, to me, I mean, that screams library to me. You could have a Washlands Visitor Centre, a library, you could have the Heritage Centre, which is going to be on the plaza, as you call it, and you could reconsider the idea of a food hall. I know you're saying it should be on Project D, but it could be a theatre, it could be something else. We could look at alternative ideas, create a cultural quarter for Burton. But we're not doing that because, quite frankly, we haven't considered any of those alternative ideas. And now we're here now only considering one. And what my ask would be that we take stock, think about what the public have told us, and reconsider whether this idea specifically is the right idea for the town. So going on to questions, first of all, it begs the question as to why we can't reconsider keeping the library where it is, because it does work with Project D. It does not mean that if we move the library, and if we don't move the library, then all of the ESBC plans fall apart. They just do not. The library could be in the current library building. And the second question is, what do library staff think of the plans? Thank you.
Councillor Victoria Wilson had indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to apologise for the fact that you only received that information in the last few hours. I've been out of the country since the 15th of December and only arrived back on duty yesterday. And we had our meeting this morning at 8:30. And we made a point of sending that information out as early as we possibly could. So that I'm sorry that I'm going to have to take the blame for that. As a council, we have spent hours and hours looking at all of the various opportunities and choices and routes down which we can travel. And that goes for East Staffs Borough Council, I'm sure that's true. But we do believe that the benefits far outweigh the negatives on this, and we don't say that lightly. In terms of the question about reconsidering what we use the building for and the visitor centre, well, again, as you know, that's down to East Staffs Borough Council, what they do. I think, tell me if I'm right or wrong, if we were to stay in the building, we'd lose some of it to the plaza, and then we'd have to do an extension on the current building anyway, so we couldn't keep it as it was, and it would be subject to a lot of improvements. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
Did anybody want to specifically answer that question? I've got Councillor Spencer's waiting to speak. Was there a specific answer to that question? Well, Councillor White has indicated.
Yeah, sorry, I did want to answer a couple of the other points Councillor Wildman made. This body cannot decide the future use of Burton Market Hall. That is the decision for its owners, who are another council, a democratically elected body. Also, though it is relevant to note that, as I mentioned in my initial presentation, this decision is the product of our partnership working with East Staffordshire Borough Council and the Towndale Board, of which Councillor Wilson and I are members. So we are not blindly pursuing one course of action here. This has been very carefully considered over 18 months in partnership with those other bodies as part of that plan for the regeneration of the town. In terms of the specifics of the use of the library building, if we remain in the library building, operating it as a library, our plan to deliver our MTFS is that we will relocate our staff onto the first floor of the library, removing that from library use. There will be no space for a visitor centre unless an extension is constructed onto that building. So we couldn't simply add that in. We would have to build an extension, and the constraints to doing that are pretty critical, in addition to which it would be a new project for government to agree to, which is challenging through the Towndale process. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bob Spencer.
Yes, Chairman, thank you for that. Obviously quite a sensitive debate. I'm not familiar with the building myself. And I've heard that obviously people are talking about the fact that there is a lot of public opinion, and that's been made clear. And also I've heard that we have done quite some sophisticated analysis of what all of the feedback says. You identified the process for this meeting, as I understand it, and you set out three options. One seemed to be to agree with the proposal, the other one was to send it back for some work, and the third one was to say no. Excuse me for summarising them. One of the things I struggle with at the moment is that if we are sending it back, if we go for option 2, and we've already heard that it's not in our gift to be able to decide the way that this building is used, that another body that does that. Do we need to be clear? I would suggest we need to be clear in what precisely we're asking to be done if we go for option 2. I've heard people talk about more work being done, but what does that mean? Surely we have a responsibility to set out, if we go for option 2, precisely what additional work needs to be done. And I have to say I'm struggling to think what that might be at the moment, having heard the arguments around the work that's already been done. Thank you.
Okay, just to clarify, the three options are, we're happy with the decision made, and there are two other options really, which are sending it off. One back to Cabinet and one is to full council. But Conor Wildman, I think you wanted to speak on that.
I did, because I think perhaps the options are more nuanced than we think. When we read the Constitution, I'll bow to John Tradewell's thoughts on this. There are the three options, but if we do recommend that Cabinet reconsiders this decision, then we as a committee can make recommendations, as you said, Bob, to ask them to do certain things. They may turn around and say, well, no, we don't want to, and they may go off and continue with the plans, but we are able to give them some direction, shall we say. And the direction that I would recommend, and I'm putting this to the committee as a recommendation to vote upon, is that we recommend, as per paragraph 17.1 of the Constitution, which allows us to recommend certain things, that the move is reconsidered by Cabinet, so that's option 2. And in their future deliberations, that this committee requests that Cabinet should compare the proposed library move into Burton Market Hall, which is the current option, with the option of retaining and refurbishing the current library building with the addition, as Mr. White says, of the Washington's Visitor Centre as an extension. That's what we would be asking for. This comparison should have regard to the comments and concerns raised in our reasons 2 and 3. for the calling document, which is found at Appendix 3 of the calling papers. That's the document. It is in this paperwork. The concerns were around the footfall and the MTFS savings point. The second recommendation, give due consideration to the principal finding of the public consultation, which confirms 77% of respondents did not agree with the proposed library move. And thirdly, convene a meeting with local members once that comparison and work has been done, so that local members have an opportunity to discuss the results of that comparison exercise with Cabinet before Cabinet make their final decision. That's what I would like this committee to consider. Thank you.
Can I just make sure we've got those down? So one was, they were all effectively reconsideration by Cabinet. One, to compare the option to retain the existing library.
Yeah.
One was local members to be consulted.
Correct.
And the one about the 77%, I missed the
That's
detail.
just to have due regard and consideration to
the
principal findings. So not the reasons, for example, the parking and so on, but the principal reason why people don't actually want it is because they don't want the move, specifically the move. So that needs to be taken into regard. That's the second point.
Okay. Is there a member prepared to second that? Councillor Tina Clements, yes.
I think what Councillor Warman has asked for is fair, and I'm more than happy to second those proposals.
Okay. We've got a proposal for this on the table. Yep. Obviously, we need to now discuss that particular proposal that's on the agenda, and Councillor Philip White has indicated.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, having due regard to the reasons why this detailed response to the basis of the call-in came to you this morning, I think it is important to point out to colleagues on the committee that this response does cover all of the detail of the substantive points in the questions that have been raised by the members who have called this in. There is also a very simple challenge with the proposal regarding visitor centre extension, which is that there isn't, I can ask Wayne Mortiboys to expand on this, but there isn't really a particularly practical way of extending the building, even if government were persuaded to change their policy approach to town deal projects, which is that they do not allow new projects to be added into a town deal. But physically, the opportunities to extend the building are very limited. But I do bring committee members back to the fact that we have a call in here which currently only has the support of 3 members of the Prosperous Staffordshire Select Committee. They had 18 months to scrutinise it through their committee. They could have requested that at any time through our regular triangulation meetings. And the deadline for submission of final business cases to government for the town deal is the 24th of March. We have a mature proposal here which is well considered, has been consulted on in detail, and we have responded to the consultation feedback that we have had from members of the public who are kind enough to give it. It is well considered, it is a sound decision. Others may want to pursue other options. They will have the opportunity at East Staffordshire Borough Council to make their case either as elected members, as some are, or as citizens. And they will decide whether this option for that building, the library, or another option is pursued. It is not for us to do that. I find the proposals very difficult, I have to say, to see how Cabinet could actually engage with them in a meaningful way. But I leave it for committee members to consider that in more detail.
Okay, I've seen that Councillor Clements has indicated, but Councillor Hussain has as well.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like to share following observation, Chairman, with your permission, please. Respected Cabinet member mentioned ESBC leaders' request to do the motions. I'm also a twin head holders. I'm also an ESBC councillor. I can share with convictions that in our council, in the borough council, there was no consensus or anything among all 39 councillors to move forward these motions or anything. So leader himself, with his own accord, he has requested without any pre-agreement with the 39 councillors. So this is something we need to explore what the ESBC wants as well. At the same token, Chair, in these documents or also in the presentations, when we ask about the trader situations and market traders, what they will do, when they will lose their livelihood and their staff will be out of business. People are still struggling to make their ends meet, but we've been told it will be considered later on. So there is no clarifications in there, quote unquote, later on. At the same token, same point, Chairman, in another scenario in this document, it shows that the washlands and aspirations and everything come in light after the consultation been lodged. So public hasn't got the chance to consider what is coming on the town. So there are so many ifs and so many doubts, Chair. So we want to do the successful project with the public support, as my colleague said. And myself, Councillor Wildman and Councillor Arshad, we three councillors represent nearly 50,000 Burton's people. And we are vehemently opposing these things, but on the same token, we want nothing but the very best for our town, and we want the success story beyond reasonable doubt. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think John Tradewell wants to speak on a procedural aspect.
Yeah, just picking up on one point from that particular aspect of the debate. The council needs to be clear it's making a decision about what the council itself does in terms of its own functions. It is not about what East Staffordshire Borough Council may do wearing its hat. This is about the decision taken by the Cabinet to move forward with the proposal to move the library from its current location to a new location, and it shouldn't be about the decisions made or not made by East Staffordshire Borough Council.
Thank you. If we could take Councillor Clements next.
Just quickly, Chair, I feel like I need to defend myself here and my Vice Chair behind me. We have a triangulation meeting before every single Prosperous Staffordshire Select Committee. Cabinet members are on those meetings. Officers are on those meetings. If you felt that this needed to come to our committee, then you should have raised that. But you're shaking your head, Philip, and I don't want to fall out with you, but you are telling me that I should have brought this to my committee. I didn't know about it until I get the documents. You are the cabinet members involved with libraries, therefore you should have made us, as me especially, aware as the chair at those triangulation meetings that this was coming forward. So I feel a little bit defensive and I apologise for that, but that's how you've made me feel.
Okay, Councillor Wyman.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to tackle this point, which is that it's somehow an ESBC decision about the library move on the Market Hall. I mean, the Cabinet, at their meeting on the 15th of December, decided to proceed with the move of our library, which we own, which facilitates the move, right? And the meaning, the fact that the Market Hall then won't be there, right? If we turned round, Cabinet said and decided that the move, we weren't happy with the move and we weren't going to go ahead, then the library stays where it is. And that is absolutely what the majority of the public actually seem to want. So it is in our decision-making process. We can do something here. It is not simply just for ESBC or for us to palm the decision off to ESBC. I just wanted to make that clear to members of the committee.
Okay. Just to remind you, we've got this agenda on the proposal, on the agenda, which is proposed by Councillor Wyman to reconsider back to Cabinet. I'm going to take Councillor Oates, who's not spoken to date.
I've got a question, and it's really simple. What was the recommendation again? What were the three elements of the recommendation, if I could, because I might want to come back.
So the recommendation is that this decision is reconsidered by Cabinet, so that just take that as like point A, because that's what we're meant to deal with. But the three recommendations, compare the proposed library move into Burton Market Hall with the option of retaining and refurbishing the current library building with and consider the extension of the Washlands Visitor Centre. And that comparison to have regard to the reasons we put in the call-in. Number 2, give due consideration to the principal finding of the public consultation on the proposed library move. And number 3, convene a meeting with local members once the comparison is complete, so that local members have the opportunity to discuss those results and before Cabinet make their final decision.
Councillor Oates again.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Just reading documents and from what I've heard, that recommendation for me would fall down in terms of the option D comparison as being already completed, and we've got a letter from, I've scribbled his name down, I've lost it now, Councillor Goodfellow, to suggest that process has already taken place. So I'm not sure if I've quite understood that. And in terms of the library move, is it about facilitating, or is it about blocking, or is it about the service itself? For me, I've never been a person about buildings. I've been a person about delivering services. So that sits uncomfortably for me. In terms of due consideration for the consultation, I think I'm assured that we've given due consideration. And what we have to remember with consultation is very often you get facts and figures. Very often you get opinions, and there's nothing wrong with opinions. They're absolutely bob on, because that's an individual's experience and that's what they bring to the table, and that's why we consider it. But here there's a stark difference between the opinions given in the consultation and the evidence we've had from other library moves elsewhere. So for me it's a question of, was that considered? And looking at the responses we've had, I would suggest it was considered. The only thing that I'd be outstanding on is the involvement of local members. As has been discussed over the last 18 months, this project's been bumbling along. I've got projects in my hometown which have been bumbling along for a long time. And it's about that journey and taking people on that journey, whether they're local members or whether they're the public. And I genuinely don't know how involved the Burton Town deal has been with local members. But for me, Mr. Chairman, just sharing an opinion, I think the recommendation falls down on the second two bits, the D and the option D, and the consideration based on the details given in the paper. Further consideration, the question is, would it generate any different response? From what we've got from Councillor Goodfellow and what Philip White, I nearly called him the wrong name now, has suggested, is actually that consideration has been done or is being done elsewhere. Our position is, are we moving a library or not? And the question is, for me, it's about service, and will that perpetuate the service of the library in Burton-on-Trent? But it's also about that facilitation. What I do know is change is a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to manage. It's a difficult thing to take people on that journey. It's a difficult thing to embed. And the comments about, there are doubts about success. There will be doubts. And there will continue to be doubts. But what we do know is the world is changing, library use is changing, town centre use is changing phenomenally at a ridiculous rate. What we have to be in a position, as far as I'm concerned, is to be flexible to enhance and make the most of those opportunities. And I think that's the bits behind this suggestion. Libraries are emotive, they always have been. This is about rebuilding Burton-on-Trent to be a prosperous town centre. I played COVID roulette over the Christmas break. I've been to Birmingham City Centre and London City Centre over the last 2 weeks. And the pace of change, which has kept those city centres alive, is phenomenal. There are tower cranes up every day and have been for years and years while they evolve. What we need to do is make sure that Staffordshire isn't left behind, particularly Burton-on-Trent, and I'll be moving on to Tamworth at a later date. We need to make sure that our quaint towns remain active and vibrant with the competition of elsewhere. So for me, it's a bigger picture than the library. I understand the concern, but I think we need to be facilitating wherever we possibly can. And I'm just concerned that stopping the potential move of the library could create a blocker in the project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to take the two speakers I've got who've indicated so far. Councillor White wants to speak again, and Councillor Wildman wants to speak again. I am aware of the fact we've got one proposal and we're probably getting close to needing to vote on it. If any members of Corporate Review have not spoken who wish to, then please indicate, and we'll get you along the line. But I'll take Councillor Philip White first.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be brief. I'm mindful of the fact we need to move the meeting on as well. It was just on 2 points that have been raised. The first is regarding the scrutiny process. It's a 360-degree process, so Cabinet members can bring items that they feel are relevant. We do a great many projects of this nature across the whole of the county, so we did not feel that this particular local project required scrutiny at Prosperous Staffordshire Select Committee. However, it is a 360-degree process, so the committee members could have asked for it to be brought there at any time, and we would have been more than happy to oblige. On Councillor Wildman's point about our ability to frustrate the preferred option that is being pursued by East Staffordshire Borough Council and the town deal regarding their plans for the regeneration of Burton Town Centre, yes, we could do that if we decided not to move our library. But the decision of our Cabinet is, in line with our policy of supporting the regeneration of our towns, that we want to work in partnership with East Staffordshire Borough Council and the Town Deal Board to help them bring forward their preferred plans with us as a partner in that process, not a passenger. So we don't want to frustrate that process. We want them to have that option, and the owner of the building, ESBC, will make a democratic decision as to whether or not they wish to pursue that usage of the building or not.
Okay, Councillor Wildman.
Thank you very much, Chair. On the frustration point, Mr. White, I don't think it's frustrating the plans if the building, which is the library building, the current library building, is going to stay as it is and be reclad. There's going to be room in there for another complementary service. It's hardly frustrating if we said that we actually want the library in there as well, but we want a small extension for a Washlets Visitor Centre. I don't think that is necessarily saying that that's frustrating the whole process. I just wanted to talk to Mr. Oates' points and try to sort of allay his concerns about the recommendations. In terms of the letter that Duncan Goodfellow has sent to you, that letter was sent unilaterally by him specifically, without consideration of other members of ESBC. That is his view. That is not the view of ESBC. And we need to make that really, really clear. He has been involved in the process, so he has probably quite wedded to the current ideas, and so is Mr. White. In terms of Mr. Oates talks about the library itself, let's not talk about a building, let's talk about services. Well, let's talk about services. We know that there will be a reduction of books if the library moves to the Market Hall. That is within the paperwork, and we've heard that there. We know that people will, I believe, come into a library that has windows, overlooks a nice area, there's a cafe there, it overlooks an area where there's an amphitheatre and people can do performing arts and whatever else. That's the current space that we have. The position, in my view, is a great one, and we are, if we move that library service, we're effectively putting in a building which doesn't have any windows, which is a smaller space, and on balance is probably not going to arguably generate as much footfall as the current library. The reason why the footfall generation is going to be increased is because you're going to refurbish it, and you could easily refurbish the current library as it is at the moment. I'd just like to make those points to Mr. Oates, and hopefully he could consider those as he makes his deliberations. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Samantha Thompson.
Thank you. Mine's really quite simple. I don't know Burton, and I can't picture either buildings that you're talking about, so I'm struggling to get a focus on both of them. What I would ask is the 77% of people that have said no to it, and I know we've gone into like the different reasons, but what is the actual reason? Is there a distance between the two areas that they can't walk to, they can't get to? I'm really struggling to sort of get a perception of it. And also, if that building, we don't own that building, do we? Do we rent that library in that building? So if we turn around and said, we don't want to move that library, would they throw us out of that building to continue their work that they want to do? Sorry, it's just simple. I'm trying to just get my head around all sorts of different questions.
Yeah, Kath Perry's indicated as well, but I'll take Wayne Waterboyce. Do you want to answer those questions?
We're probably going to say exactly the same thing. The County Council is the freehold owner of the existing library. The Market Hall is currently in the freehold of the Borough Council.
Your microphone's off.
If it was refused and it stayed in the same place, the company, that library wouldn't be kicked out. No, that's fine. I just couldn't understand that. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, just to answer the question again.
Yeah, I just wanted to refer to the breakdown of the consultation that was done, and we did a really detailed analysis of that. So I'm going to ask if Catherine Mann could have sort of let us know a little bit more about that.
I was just going to talk about the space within the library. If we relocate to the Market Hall, we would still have that flexible space that we've got at the moment. The Market Hall building would be 20% smaller than the existing Burton Library. When we relocated to Lichfield Library, there was a 72% reduction in the size, yet the use of that library and the space went up by 97% in the first year. So having a smaller library building, going back to Councillor Oates' points, it's about having the right service within that space and ensuring that the library offer is robust within that space to encourage and attract library users to continue to use it.
Thank you. Councillor Kath Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just say, I think we went through a process like this about 10, 12 years ago on library facilities within Staffordshire, the whole of Staffordshire. To my recollection, am I not correct? Yes, I can see the nodding heads. For me, it's about our responsibility as an authority and servicing a library service to the community of Staffordshire. It isn't about the building. The building is important, but it's not about the building as such. It's about keeping a library service within Staffordshire. I wished we'd got the option, and I do know both buildings, by the way. I've been to both of the buildings in Burton. It's about, and I wished we'd got something like that in my patch. Unfortunately, we haven't, but we do still have a library service, which we're grateful of. Yes, times are changing within a library service as to the need within a library service of books, etc. That's been an ongoing issue for the last 12 years. I don't think, as far as I'm aware, it hasn't been detrimental to any of the libraries that are still going, whether they're community libraries or otherwise within Staffordshire. So for me, I take on board everything that's been said, and maybe I'm coming in at it a little bit late, Chairman, on this, because it's the first meeting I've been to of this particular committee. But I do think that it's what Staffordshire County Council are responsible for, as opposed to listening to what East Stafford Borough Council are responsible for. So for me, I think if it's moved, it's moved. And believe it or not, I believe that the people will still use it. And there might be even a more of a footfall using it because of the new facility that will be available to them. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay, there's nobody else has indicated. We have got a proposal that's been put forward and seconded, and that is that the decision by the council should be passed back to the cabinet for reconsideration. I won't go into the details, but Councillor Wyman has suggested three things that should be part of that reconsideration, and I'd now like to ask the members of corporate review if they're agreeable. We should be in the stage of voting on that. So can I ask for a show of hands for those in favour of that proposal? Did you want some clarification, Councillor Thompson?
I'm just really struggling with this at the moment because I've just asked how far the distance is between, and it's 2 minutes walk, isn't it? Yeah, 2 minutes walk away. So I'm really struggling with what it'll achieve going back to Cabinet.
Well, you'll have to vote as you see fit. That's the best I can say at this stage. We're at the stage now we need to vote. All those in favour of the proposal? Yeah, those against? Okay, well, I'm afraid the proposal is therefore rejected. We have no other counter proposal. Can I have a proposal? Correct, yes. That was just the votes of the Corporate Review Committee. On the basis that there is no other proposal, I would suggest that we're in the stage of saying to the Cabinet that we want the option of accept the decision that's been taken. Is that the agreement of the committee? Can I have a proposal for that solution? Councillor Oates, is there a seconder? Councillor Spencer. Okay, all those in favour of that proposal? Yes, 4-4. And those against? 2. Okay, the recommendation of the Corporate Review Committee is therefore that the proposal should be accepted and it should go forward with the Cabinet's recommendation as per the meeting that it had in December of last year. I would say in concluding the meeting that I think this has been a very fair and robust discussion. I know there's been some discussions about how things have happened in the past, but I actually think this has been a very genuine and open demonstration of democracy here, where we've had the opportunity to discuss the whys and wherefores, and I've certainly learned a lot more about the decision that's been taken. So I thank everybody for their contributions. And close the meeting.